It started with a single bark, sharp, deafening. That froze every officer in the station. Coffee cups stopped midair. Conversations died mid-sentence. Every head turned toward the far corner, where the sound had come from. Behind thick iron bars, a massive German shepherd stood trembling with rage, his golden eyes burning like fire. No one moved. No one dared, because that dog wasn't just any canine. He was the most feared animal in the entire city, the one they called the untouchable. He had once been a hero, the pride of the force, until the day everything changed. The day his handler never came back. Since then, something inside him had shattered. He refused food, attacked anyone who came close, and growled at every human who dared make eye contact. Officers whispered his name with dread, like speaking it too loudly might wake a storm. That morning, his growls echoed through the concrete hallways, low and warning, a reminder that no one could touch him, not a single soul. But fate has a cruel sense of humor, because while every trained officer in that precinct feared for their lives, someone unexpected was about to walk through those doors. Someone who wasn't a cop, or a handler, or even tall enough to reach the cage. A little girl with a teddy bear in her hand, and something far stronger in her heart. Before we begin, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Tell me in the comments, where you watching from? I love seeing how far our stories travel. They called him Rex, a name once spoken with pride, now whispered with fear. He had been the city's brightest star, trained to track explosives, chase fugitives, and protect lives. Side by side with his handler, Sergeant Cole Evans, he'd faced gunfire, storms, and nights that smelled of danger. Together they had saved dozens, maybe hundreds. But one night on the outskirts of town, everything fell apart. An explosion ripped through a raid gone wrong. When the smoke cleared, only one figure lay still. Cole never got back up. Rex tried to drag him, pawing at the dirt, barking into the fire. But the soldier who had once called his name was gone. From that night forward, something inside the dog died. Transferred from one precinct to another, he bit trainers, shattered cages, and tore through steel chains until his paws bled. 5 stations tried to handle him. 5 failed. His file was thick with red stamps. Uncontrollable. Extreme aggression. Unfit for service. But the reports didn't mention how he would cry in the dark, how he'd stare at the door for hours, waiting for a voice that would never return. To the world, he was a monster. To himself, he was a ghost. Captain Reynolds, a hard-edged man with 20 years on the force, finally took him in, but only because no one else would. One more incident, he warned the team, and he's done. The word done hung heavy in the air. Everyone knew what it meant, and yet, buried somewhere beneath that fury, behind the growl and the scars, something still flickered, faint, fragile, but alive. Everyone believed the beast had reached his end. They were wrong. The morning he arrived, rain slicked the city streets like polished steel. A black police van rolled through the gates of Riverdale Precinct, engine humming low. Inside, chained, muzzled, and silent, sat Rex. His chest rose and fell slowly, but his eyes, those sharp amber eyes, never stopped scanning the world outside. When the doors opened, 2 handlers stepped out in protective sleeves. Even they looked nervous. "That's him," one muttered. The other nodded. "Yeah, the untouchable." The dog didn't snarl. He didn't bark. He just watched. The kind of stare that made men step back without realizing it. Inside, the team gathered around as Captain Reynolds briefed them. "This dog's been through 5 precincts in 2 years. Last handler lost half his arm trying to leash him. He's not a recruit. He's a test. Observe him, but no one, and I mean no one, enters that kennel without my clearance." Murmurs spread across the room. "Why even keep him?" a rookie whispered. Reynolds' eyes darkened. "Because he's not just a dog. He was the best K-9 the force ever had. And if there's even a 1% chance we can bring him back, we try." From the corner, Officer Mark Jensen watched quietly. 10 years of K-9 work had taught him what trauma looked like, and what it did to those who survived. Rex's breathing, his twitching ears, the way he avoided looking at humans, it wasn't defiance. It was pain. Rex didn't know it yet, But the man behind that glass would soon be the bridge between two broken hearts. Mark had seen enough in his career to stop believing in happy endings. Years ago, his own partner, a black Labrador named Shadow, had taken a bullet meant for him. Mark still carried the guilt like an old scar. Since then, he'd trained other dogs, but never let himself get close. Not again. When Captain Reynolds handed him Rex's file, Mark sighed. "You're kidding, right? I'm not volunteering for suicide." "You're not," the captain replied. "You're volunteering for hope." Mark flipped through the pages, photographs of snarling teeth, shredded cages, handler reports. Every line screamed lost cause. "I'm not sure hope's enough," Mark muttered. "Maybe not," Reynolds said softly. "But you're the only one who understands loss." That line hit harder than Mark expected. He looked up, met the captain's eyes, and saw that this wasn't an order. It was a plea. Hours later, he found himself standing in front of the reinforced glass of Rex's kennel. The dog was pacing, muscles tight, tail stiff. Mark didn't speak. He just watched. The silence between them was thick, but not empty. For the first time in years, Mark felt something stir, not fear, not pity, but recognition. "I know that look," he whispered. "You've lost someone too." He didn't know it yet, but those quiet words were the first crack in a wall built from pain and time. Mark turned to leave, his voice low. "You and me, boy, maybe we're both done believing, but maybe we're both wrong." Day after day, Mark observed from behind the glass. He spoke little, but he noticed everything. Rex flinched at thunder, tensed at heavy boots, growled at certain uniforms, small details that painted a clearer picture than any file ever could. One evening, Officer Diaz joined him. "You know his story?" he asked. Mark shook his head. "Military dog," Diaz explained. "Served overseas. His handler, Sergeant Evans, saved a convoy, died in an ambush. Rex barely made it back alive." Mark's throat tightened. The pieces began to fit. "That's why he doesn't trust anyone," he murmured. Rex suddenly lifted his head, eyes locking on Mark through the glass, as if hearing his name. The room went silent. For a heartbeat, man and dog simply stared at each other. Two soldiers on opposite sides of the same war. Mark didn't flinch. He just nodded slowly, a gesture of respect. Rex blinked, confused, then turned away. For the first time since he arrived, the growl didn't follow. And though Mark didn't realize it yet, that silent exchange was the start of something neither of them could have imagined. By the end of the week, everyone was tired of waiting. Officer Grant, young and bold, insisted he could handle the beast. Despite Mark's warning, the captain allowed a controlled test. Grant stepped into the cage room with steady hands and a sleeve reinforced with Kevlar. "Easy boy," he said, voice firm. "No one's going to hurt you." Rex stood motionless in the corner, eyes narrow, breath slow. The air felt heavy, charged. Grant crouched, extending a gloved hand. "Good boy," he whispered. That was the mistake. Rex lunged, a flash of fur, chain snapping tight. The sound of metal against muzzle echoed like a gunshot. Officers shouted, scrambling to close the gate as Grant stumbled back, sleeve torn, blood running down his arm. "Get him out." "Now," someone yelled. Mark rushed forward, slamming the lock as Rex barked wildly, chest heaving, eyes filled with terror more than rage. "He's not attacking," Mark shouted. "He's remembering." But the captain's voice cut through the chaos. "That's it. End of the week. He's done." The word hung like a death sentence. Mark looked at the trembling dog behind the bars, panting, trembling alone. For reasons he couldn't explain, he felt something twist deep in his chest. Everyone else saw a monster. He saw a soldier still waiting for orders from a voice that would never come. And somewhere out there, that voice, or at least a piece of it, was on its way to him. It was a quiet Saturday morning at the precinct. Papers rustled, coffee steamed, and the rain tapped gently on the tall windows. Nothing unusual until the doors opened. A woman stepped inside holding a small hand. Her name was Emily Evans, wearing a faded denim jacket, her eyes carrying the weight of years. Beside her walked a little girl, 6 years old, pink dress, teddy bear clutched tight, curiosity shining brighter than fear. "Can I help you, ma'am?" the desk officer asked. Emily smiled faintly. "My husband served here before he passed. I wanted to show my daughter where her father once worked." The officer's expression softened. "Of course. Take your time." While Emily spoke, the girl wandered a few steps away, drawn by a distant sound, a deep, echoing growl from behind thick metal doors. "Mommy," she whispered, tugging her mother's sleeve. "Are there dogs here?" "Yes, sweetheart, but we can't go in there." The little girl nodded politely, but her eyes stayed fixed down the hall. In the K-9 wing, Rex lifted his head. His ears flicked. His nose twitched. Something in the air changed, a scent, soft but familiar, stirring an old memory buried deep within him. He stood silent, alert. No growl. No bark. Just waiting. Behind the observation glass, Mark noticed it instantly. "That's new," he murmured. Then he saw her, a child at the end of the corridor, eyes wide and innocent. Every officer nearby froze. Before anyone could react, the little girl smiled and started walking toward the cage. "Wait!" Mark shouted, running forward. But she didn't stop. And in that instant, the beast the world feared the most felt something he hadn't known in years, calm. Mark's boots slammed against the tile floor as he sprinted toward the K-9 hallway. "Don't open that door," he shouted, voice cracking with panic. But the little girl didn't hear him. Or maybe she did, and simply didn't care. With a soft click, the heavy metal door creaked open. The room went silent. Inside the cage, Rex lifted his head. His body went rigid, muscles tight, ears pointed forward. Every sign screamed danger. Yet for the first time, he didn't lunge. He didn't growl. He just watched her. The little girl stepped inside the room, her pink dress brushing lightly against her knees, her teddy bear dangling from her tiny hand. She wasn't trembling. She wasn't scared. She just smiled. "Hi, doggy," she whispered. The officers behind the glass sucked in a breath. Mark stopped in the doorway, afraid to move, afraid to breathe. One wrong sound could trigger an attack. But Lily, because that's what Emily called her, took another small step. "I know you're sad," she murmured. "Mommy says Daddy was sad too. But it's okay." Rex's chest rose sharply. His tail twitched, not a wag, but not a threat either. Confusion flickered in his eyes, followed by something softer. Something aching. Slowly, Lily crouched and set her teddy bear on the floor. "He's nice," she said gently. "You can smell him if you want." Rex's ears lowered. His eyes softened. And then he moved. One paw forward. Then another. The station fell into absolute stillness. Lily lifted her tiny hand and pressed it against the cold iron bars. Rex stopped inches away. His breath was shaky, uneven. Then, with a soft whine, so fragile it barely sounded real, he lowered his head and pressed his muzzle against her fingers. Gasps erupted behind the glass. The untouchable dog touched her. And in that moment, the monster every officer feared became something else entirely. He became a heart finally remembering what love felt like. Word of the miracle spread through the precinct by sundown. Officers replayed the footage again and again, shaking their heads as if their eyes were lying. But Mark didn't shake his head. He leaned forward each time, studying every detail, the slow wag of the tail, the softened gaze, the gentle whine. Something inside Rex had changed, and it happened the exact moment he saw that little girl. The next morning, Mark marched into Captain Reynolds' office. "I need you to approve another visit," he said firmly. Reynolds looked at him like he'd lost his mind. "You want to put that child in danger again?" Mark shook his head. "She's the only one he trusts. The only one he responds to. We need this." Reynolds hesitated, then sighed. "One visit, under supervision." By afternoon, Emily and Lily were back at the precinct. The moment Rex saw Lily walk down the hall, everything in him shifted. His ears perked, his tail lifted slightly, and for the first time in months, his eyes looked alive. Lily sat beside the bars, giggling softly as she slipped her fingers through the gaps. "Hi, doggy. I missed you." Rex pressed his head against the bars, closing his eyes, breathing her in like she carried a piece of a world he thought he'd lost forever. Day after day, Lily returned. She drew little pictures of her family and taped them near Rex's kennel. She talked about school, sunshine, and the silly way her mom burned toast. Rex listened. He ate more. He slept better. He barked less. For the first time since his handler died, the storm inside him was quieting. But something about their bond still puzzled Mark. Something deep. Something familiar. He just didn't know why. Not yet. It was late evening when Mark found the old file. He wasn't searching for anything specific, just rereading Rex's military records for the 100th time. But buried behind the last page was a folded photograph, worn at the corners. He opened it carefully. There was Sergeant Cole Evans, kneeling in the desert sand, arm around a younger Rex. And beside them, a woman holding a toddler in a pink dress, smiling wide with the same bright eyes Lily had. Mark's breath caught. On the back of the photo were 4 handwritten words. Rex, Daddy's brave partner. Love, Lily. His heart pounded as the truth slammed into him. Rex didn't just trust Lily. He remembered her. Her scent. Her voice. The tiny shoes she wore when she toddled into his arms years ago. She wasn't just any child. She was the daughter of the man Rex had loved more than anyone on this earth. And somehow, through grief, trauma, and time, the dog had recognized her. The next morning, Mark approached Emily gently. Mrs. Evans, he whispered, did your husband ever work with a K-9 overseas? Emily blinked back tears. Yes, his partner was a German Shepherd. He always said he trusted that dog with his life. Mark nodded, voice trembling. That dog wasn't just his partner. He was family. Rex remembers you. Both of you. Emily covered her mouth, tears spilling as she looked down the hallway where Lily knelt beside the kennel. And in that quiet moment, everything made sense. Rex hadn't just found a new friend. He had found the last piece of the family he thought he'd lost forever. The storm rolled in without warning. Thunder cracked like artillery fire. Rain slammed against the precinct windows in angry waves. Wind howled through empty streets like a warning from the sky itself. In the K-9 wing, Rex woke with a jolt. Lightning flashed, white blinding. His ears flattened. His breath quickened. The storm sounded too much like the night his handler died. Memories erupted like shrapnel inside his mind. Explosions, shouts, the smell of burning earth. He whimpered, pacing in circles, claws scraping the floor. Officer Diaz noticed on the security feed. Mark, your boy's losing it. Mark was already running. But before he reached the hallway, a thunderclap shook the building. Rex panicked. He lunged at the door. The weakened bolt snapped. In seconds, he was gone, a flash of fur disappearing into the storm. By the time Mark reached the empty cage, cold rain was blowing in through an open exit door. Damn it, Rex, he yelled, sprinting outside. Across town, Emily's car sputtered to a stop near the old bridge. Rain hammered the roof. Lily hugged her teddy bear, shivering. Emily tried the ignition. Nothing. We'll wait it out, she said, trying to sound calm. But Lily stared through the fogged window. Mommy's here. Emily frowned. Who? Lily pointed. A dark, drenched shape was standing in the middle of the road, staring straight at their car. Rex. He barked once, sharp and urgent, then ran toward the nearby woods. He wants us to follow, Lily whispered. Lily, no. Emily shouted as the child flung the door open and dashed into the rain. Emily chased her, calling her name again and again, but her voice was swallowed by thunder. Mark's police radio crackled just as he reached the main road. Missing child near the East Bridge. Possible connection to escaped K-9. His blood ran cold. Somewhere out there, a frightened little girl and a broken dog had run straight into the heart of a storm that neither of them could survive alone. Mark hit the sirens. Hold on, Rex. Don't do anything stupid. Rain poured in sheets as Lily stumbled through the mud, calling out softly. Rex! Rex, where are you? A sharp bark answered from somewhere ahead. Lily followed it, slipping and falling, but pushing through the storm with determination only a child could hold. At last, she reached a clearing. Rex stood tall at the edge, soaked, shivering, wounded, but watching her carefully. She ran to him and wrapped her arms around his neck. You found me, she whispered. But Rex wasn't calm. His ears twitched. His body stiffened. He barked sharply, facing the darkness behind her. Lightning flashed, revealing a broken, unstable tree teetering on the edge of a muddy slope. Before she could react, the ground beneath Lily crumbled. She screamed as she slid down toward the ravine. Rex bolted. He lunged forward, grabbing the back of her jacket with his teeth at the last second. His paws dug into the wet earth, muscles straining. Mud splattered across his fur. He growled through the pain, refusing to let her fall. "Hold on, boy," Lily gasped, gripping his collar. With a final, desperate pull, Rex dragged her back to solid ground just as the massive tree crashed down behind them, exploding the earth with a deafening crack. Moments later, Mark burst through the trees, flashlight beams slicing through the storm. "Lily," he shouted, voice breaking. "Here," she cried weakly. "Rex saved me." Mark dropped to his knees, pulling the trembling child into his arms. His flashlight swept across Rex. Blood, a deep gash along his side. He'd shielded her from the falling tree. "Oh, buddy," Mark whispered, voice trembling. "You did it. You did good." Rex looked up at him, eyes cloudy, body shaking, but still standing protectively over Lily. Then, finally, his strength ran out. He collapsed into the mud. "No," Lily sobbed. "Rex! Wake up, Rex!" Mark gathered the dog in his arms as sirens wailed in the distance. "You're not dying tonight," he whispered fiercely. "Not after everything." And through the pounding rain, they raced back toward life. The world inside the animal hospital felt too quiet. Machines beeped softly. Sterile lights hummed. Emily held Lily close as she cried silently into her mother's shirt. Mark paced, soaked to the bone, mud streaked across his arms. He'd seen injuries like this before, deep, brutal, the kind that stole soldiers away. But Rex wasn't just a soldier anymore. He was family. After what felt like hours, the veterinarian finally stepped out, her eyes tired but warm. "He's stable," she said softly. "The wound was deep, but he's a fighter. You can see him. Just for a moment." Lily ran inside before anyone could stop her. Rex lay on the table, wrapped in bandages, breathing slowly, and Ford dripped beside him. His fur was shaved around the wound, and his eyes were closed. "Hey, boy," Lily whispered, her voice fragile. "It's me." Rex's ear twitched. Then his eyes fluttered open, hazy at first, then clear. When he saw her, his tail gave the faintest thump against the bed. Lily burst into tears, hugging him gently. "You came back," she whispered, "just like Daddy said you would." Rex let out a soft whine, pressing his head weakly against her shoulder. Emily covered her mouth. Mark looked away, blinking hard. "He remembers," Emily whispered. "No," Mark replied quietly. "He never forgot." For the first time since the storm began, Rex drifted into sleep, not from exhaustion, not from fear, but from peace. Because for the first time in years, he wasn't alone. 2 months later, winter settled gently over Riverdale. Snow drifted across the precinct courtyard as officers gathered in crisp uniforms. At the center stood a freshly polished podium, a silver badge glinting under pale sunlight. Mark stood beside Emily and Lily, and beside them, for thick, eyes bright, posture proud, stood Rex. No muzzle, no chains, no fear, just a hero returning home. Captain Reynolds stepped forward, voice steady but emotional. "Today, we honor bravery beyond duty. A soldier who protected us once, and protected us again when it mattered most. Rex, for saving a child's life, we welcome you as an honorary officer of the Riverdale Police Department." Applause broke across the courtyard. Lily clapped the loudest. "That's my Rex," she shouted proudly. Mark knelt and scratched behind Rex's ear. "You finally made it home, buddy." Rex looked up, then turned toward Emily and Lily, his new family, and pressed his nose gently against Lily's hand. Snowflakes melted on his warm fur as the little girl wrapped her arms around him and whispered, "Welcome home." In the end, Rex taught everyone a lesson the world forgets too easily. Sometimes the most broken hearts don't need fear. They need someone brave enough to understand them. And sometimes healing doesn't come from strength. It comes from innocence, kindness, and love. If this story touched your heart, Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Tell me in the comments, where you watching from? Your words help these stories travel farther than you can imagine. Thank you for being here.